Genghis Khan had somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 women in his harem. He is the direct ancestor of roughly 16 million people alive today, and yet historians describe him as one of the most disciplined military minds in human history. So how does that work? How does a man who slept with more women than most people will ever meet in their entire lifetime, how does he become the template for killing lust? That's not a joke. Stick with me. If you're new here, hit subscribe. This channel is about using history's most brutal, misunderstood, and honestly kind of insane figures to figure out how to actually live better. Not in a motivational poster way, in a real way. And today, we're going deep. Because lust, and I don't just mean the sexual kind, I mean the lust for anything you can't stop craving, is probably the thing quietly destroying more men's lives, right? Now than almost anything else. And nobody wants to talk about it honestly. So we're going to, but before we get into the 5 steps, I want to plant something in your head that we're going to come back to later. Because around the midpoint of this video, I'm going to tell you something about Genghis Khan that completely flipped how I understood self-control. And when I first heard it, I genuinely sat there for like a minute just staring at the wall. So keep that in mind. Alright, let's start at the beginning. Temujin, that was Genghis Khan's actual name before he conquered everything and rebranded, grew up with almost nothing. His father was poisoned when he was 9. His own tribe abandoned his family to die on the steppe. He was literally a child living in a tent in one of the harshest environments on earth, with no food, no protection, and no future. Now here's what most people do when they grow up in scarcity. They spend the rest of their life trying to fill that hole. They chase, they hoard, they overconsume, because when you've had nothing, having something, anything, feels like proof that you made it. Food, money, women, status, likes on Instagram, whatever the drug is. The poverty mindset doesn't go away just because the poverty does. But Temujin did something different. And it wasn't because he was some enlightened monk. He wasn't. He was ruthless. He once had his own brother executed. The guy was not soft, but he understood something early, something that most of us only figure out after we've already wasted years, which is that desire, unchecked, makes you stupid. Not metaphorically, literally cognitively impaired. There's actual research on this. When you are in a state of craving, whether it's lust, hunger, greed, whatever, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for long-term thinking and decision-making, goes quiet. And the limbic system, the ancient animal part of your brain, takes the wheel. You become, neurologically speaking, closer to a raccoon digging through trash than to the person you think you are. Genghis Khan built an empire across 24 million square kilometers. That doesn't happen if you're being driven by your impulses. That only happens if you've figured out how to be the driver. So, step 1. Understand what lust actually is. Not what religion says it is, what it actually, functionally is. Lust is your brain confusing short-term relief for long-term reward. That's it. Your brain is pattern matching. It learned at some point that X thing made you feel good. And now it keeps telling you that X thing is the solution to whatever you're currently feeling. Stressed? Your brain offers you the thing. Bored? The thing. Lonely? Oh buddy, have we got a thing for you? And the reason it's so hard to fight is that your brain isn't wrong exactly. The thing does make you feel better. For like 11 minutes. And then it makes you feel worse. And then you need more of it to get back to baseline. And baseline keeps dropping. That cycle, that's the trap. And most advice about lust tries to address it at the symptom level. Don't look at that, don't touch this, block that website, delete that app, which fine, those things can help in the short term, but they don't fix the mechanism. You're just building a wall around a fire instead of putting the fire out. Genghis Khan didn't avoid temptation by hiding from it. The man was surrounded by it. He built systems instead of relying on willpower, and that's the real lesson. Willpower is a resource, it depletes, systems don't. But before we get to the systems, step 2, and this one's uncomfortable, you have to get honest about what you're actually hungry for. Because here's the thing about lust, that nobody says out loud. Most of the time, it's not about the thing you think it's about. The guy who can't stop watching porn for 6 hours a night? Is he really that obsessed with sex? Or is he lonely? Or does he feel powerless in every other area of his life? And this is the one thing where he feels like he has control. Or is he just running from the silence in his own head? The guy who keeps jumping from relationship to relationship, is he actually in love with love? Or is he terrified of being truly known by someone, so he leaves before they can see all of it? I'm not diagnosing anyone. I've been both of those guys at different points. Most people have. The point is, the surface desire is almost never the real desire. It's a proxy. It's your brain handing you a vending machine snack when what you actually need is a real meal. Genghis Khan, and yes, I know it's weird to keep using him for this, but stay with me, was deeply motivated by belonging, by loyalty. His whole military and political philosophy was built around it. He elevated people based on merit, not blood, which was insane for his era. He was loyal to the people who were loyal to him, sometimes to a fault. Historians think a significant part of what drove him was the wound from being abandoned as a child. He spent his whole life building something that could never abandon him again. That's not a healthy origin story, but he understood the wound. He knew what he was actually hungry for, and that self-knowledge shaped how he operated. Most of us never do that work. We just keep eating the vending machine snack and wondering why we're still hungry. So what are you actually hungry for? Sit with that. Seriously, not right now. You're watching a video, but tonight, or tomorrow morning. What is it? Because once you know, you can actually address it. You can feed yourself properly instead of just endlessly grazing. Alright, step 3. And this is where it gets tactical. You need to raise the cost of the behavior. One of the most consistent things you find in the lives of genuinely disciplined people is that they engineered their environment so that the bad choice was the hard one and the good choice was the easy one. They didn't trust themselves to make the right decision in the moment because they understood that in the moment, you're not fully you. You're raccoon brain you. And raccoon brain you will absolutely eat garbage if the garbage is right there and free. Genghis Khan did this with his army. Before a major campaign, his generals were forbidden from engaging in certain activities, not because of morality, but because he understood that men in a state of indulgence became sluggish, distracted, and soft. He didn't give a speech about values. He changed the environment. He structured scarcity. He made the undisciplined choice harder to access. You can do this. It doesn't require you to become some ascetic who eats 1 grain of rice and sleeps on a rock. It means if you're trying to stop doom scrolling at 1 a.m., don't put your phone on your nightstand. Put it across the room, or in another room. Make the bad choice require effort. If you're trying to stop binge eating junk food, don't buy the junk food. Don't rely on willpower to resist it in your kitchen at 10 p.m. when you're tired, just don't have it in the house. Make the bad choice require a trip to a store. The distance matters more than almost anything else. Every extra step you put between yourself and the thing gives your prefrontal cortex time to come back online. Even 5 seconds of friction can break the automatic behavior loop. This sounds almost too simple. That's why people ignore it. We want the big dramatic insight, the spiritual breakthrough, the cold plunge and journaling routine that completely transforms us. And sometimes those things help, but often the most powerful change is just make the thing harder to do. Now, about halfway through, here's what I promised you earlier. The surprising thing about Genghis Khan. For all his expansion, all his conquest, all the wealth, he repeatedly, voluntarily, gave things away. He distributed plunder to his soldiers far more generously than any other conqueror of his era. He gave away horses, gold, land. He actively chose less for himself, not because he had to. He was the most powerful man on the planet. No one could tell him no. He did it because he understood something that almost no one with that level of power ever figures out. That accumulation beyond a certain point doesn't make you more powerful. It makes you weaker, because now you have things to protect. Now you have things to lose. Now the things own you, more than you own them. That's the paradox at the center of all of this. The thing you're lusting after often reverses the power dynamic. You pursued it, now it has you. You're managing it, protecting it, needing more of it to feel the same effect. What started as desire became dependency. He called this the difference between a man who conquers and a man who is conquered by his conquests. Think about that for a second. How many things in your life right now, things you went after, how many of them are now running you instead of the other way around? Step 4. Stop trying to kill lust. Start replacing it. I know, pure suppression doesn't work long term. This is a finding in behavioral psychology. When you tell yourself don't think about X, you think about X constantly. It's called the rebound effect, the white bear problem. The guys who are most successful at breaking compulsive patterns don't white-knuckle their way through. They redirect the energy. Lust is just intense focused desire. An intense focused desire, pointed in the right direction, is exactly what you need to build something meaningful. Genghis Khan was one of the most lustful people in history. He wanted land, power, and glory. But he had a mission large enough. What's your mission? Your actual mission. The thing that, if you spent all that craving energy on it, would become something real. A man without a mission is a man whose desires have nowhere to go except in circles. Find the thing, make it big enough. Step 5. You have to stop romanticizing the struggle. Some people find a weird identity in the battle with their own demons. If they actually got better, they'd have to figure out who they are without the struggle. The struggle becomes the personality. This looks like discipline, culture, like the guy who posts about his 5 a.m. cold plunges, but is still fighting the same battles years later. Genghis Khan never let the wound become the identity. He was betrayed and enslaved, but he used it as fuel, and then he moved. At some point you have to decide, is this something I'm working through, or something I'm living in? The goal is to build a life. Build a life that's interesting and meaningful enough that the impulses don't run the show anymore. Not because you suppressed them, you outgrew them. It means becoming someone for whom that craving is no longer the most interesting thing on the menu. Genghis Khan built something total. At the end of his life, he seemed genuinely at peace. He'd done what he came to do. That peace comes from output, not suppression. 5 steps. Understand lust. Get honest about hunger. Raise the cost. Replace. Don't kill. Stop romanticizing the struggle. The fact that you're still here says something. Most people click off. You looked? That's step 0. The rest is just practice. If this hit different, drop a comment. If you know someone who needs this, forward it silently. See you in the next one.